Okay, welcome to Global Issues Evaluator Training. We're now going to talk about the scoring of Step 3, which is the scoring of solutions. You're going to notice some very common threads in scoring solutions that we've already previously discussed in Step 1, evaluating challenges. So the objective for students in Step 3 is to produce solution ideas as addressed in their underlying problem. That's probably the most common mistakes that students make, is that they struggle with connecting their solutions to that underlying problem. We're going to take a look at fluency, flexibility, elaboration, originality, and feedback. These are all of the same aspects in Step 1, with the exception of in Step 3 we take a look at elaboration, whereas in Step 1 we took a look at clarity. When we are scoring Step 3, we are looking for fluency, which is the number of relevant solutions. We are awarded up to 10 points for that. Again, this is based on a scale, the same scale as Step 1. We are looking for elaboration in Step 3. We're looking for significant areas of detail that the students have included in their solution. We award up to 10 points for elaboration. We will look at the flexibility of the solutions using that same category list and the same process that we used in Step 1. And again, you will see originality as an option here. These are the insightful, aha, one of the kind solutions that can be awarded. And those are a bonus of 3 points for each. I do see a little typo on our screen there. It says challenges, but we really mean solutions. So we're constantly editing these, so that should say solutions there. Okay, in Step 3, we want to measure the solutions as being relevant solutions. And the relevant solutions are those that are connected to the underlying problem. They not only should be connected to the underlying problem, they must address the key verb phrase and support the purpose. It should achieve the goal of the underlying problem. It should have a relationship, and it should support the purpose. If you remember when we talked about the role of the evaluator to keep an open mind, this also applies to Step 3 evaluations. We're not evaluating the workability of the solution. It doesn't have to work perfectly in order for us to score it a relevant solution. Solutions should operate within the future scene. Because the underlying problem is addressing the future scene, the solutions that are connected to the underlying problem would need to operate underneath those parameters of the events and the occurrences and with the stakeholders that are identified in that future scene. Here we do ask that the students write the solutions as definite proposals. These are their solutions to solve their underlying problems. So we ask that they use the word will. This reinforces that this solution will solve the problem that we identified. We do want to make sure that we are focusing on the ideas, focusing on the critical thinking and the creativity that the students are exhibiting. We're not evaluating the sophistication of the writing here. We want to make sure that any of the solutions that we deem are relevant are scored as an R. By scoring them as an R, they are then eligible to receive points for categories, and they can be considered for elaboration. Okay, do we have any questions here to start us off?
So just like with the challenges, you have to be relevant before you can get any more points.
Correct. Just like with challenges who require a yes before you can earn subsequent points, in solutions, a lot of similarities. The solutions that are scored in R can then earn points for categories, flexibility, and can be considered for elaboration points. You are correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to take a close look at relevant solutions. So what does a relevant solution look like? Just review this very quickly so that we can see what the other ones would be scored as. If it is not relevant, it would then perhaps be a perhaps solution. And a perhaps solution, okay, we got a little behind on our clicking there again, sorry about that. A perhaps solution are those solutions that are lacking that connection. They're not connected to the key verb phrase and the purpose. They might be a good solution to other things that were happening in the future scene, but if they're not connected to that underlying problem, they can not be scored as relevant, so they might be a perhaps solution there. And maybe it doesn't describe the action that's being taken. That might be missing. If those kinds of solutions are identified by the evaluator, you're going to score that solution as a P. You would not assign a category, and you would encourage the team to provide greater explanation. You might also encourage a stronger relationship to the key verb phrase or purpose based upon what they've actually included. Why solutions? Why solutions don't really produce any action for the underlying problem. It doesn't describe what the solution is. We really have some assumptions that have been made that are unclear. The why solutions could also contradict the future scene. It might go in a direction that's different than what's actually happening in the future scene. So those solutions would be scored as a Y, and the evaluator should probe, ask for some clarifying information from the team to tell them that some additional explanations would be beneficial so that they could understand their idea there. And then lastly, if it's not a relevant solution, it could be a duplicate solution. Again, very similar here to how we scored challenges. If it's too contextually similar to another solution that was scored as relevant, remember we're not calling it a duplicate if it duplicates the category. We're calling it a duplicate if the solution, the content of the idea is a duplicate. We would give the students the benefit of the doubt for their first duplicate, but after the third similarity, we're going to start counting them as duplicates. Oftentimes, evaluators will put in their comments next to those solutions, scored as irrelevant, but very close to a duplicate. Be careful not to generate duplicate solutions. Are there any questions before we move on to elaboration about how we evaluate solutions as either relevant or wise or duplicates or perhaps?
Yes, I do have one question, and it's about your electronic score sheet.
Yes.
Your electronic score sheet also gives the choice of blank in the scoring of the solution.
Yes. And that's just if the students left that blank. That just gives us an indicator that we didn't miss evaluating a solution, but that the student work was left blank.
Okay.
Good question. Fundraising, just raising funds, having a fundraiser that is a potluck dinner, and then having a fundraiser that is a quilt raffle, those would be considered duplicates. They're using the theme of fundraising in two different directions, so that's not a unique solution. Okay, the next thing we're going to take a look at is elaboration. So any of our solutions that we have indicated as relevant should include details. We might find the who, And it should be a meaningful who. We wouldn't just say the United Nations. Maybe we might say the United Nations Task Force on Extinct Species. Okay, that would be a little more specific, and we wouldn't want that same who over and over. We want it to be a logical and a believable who. We wouldn't also, we want to encourage, especially our junior teams, not to come up with who's like dangerous Debs de-extinction debate team will do something. So they like to come up with these silly who's, but unless it's really something appropriate to the future scene, we do encourage the who's to be significant and logical to the topic. What is actually going to happen in the solution? How is the solution going to work? Why does the solution solve that underlying problem? How does it connect to the key verb phrase or the purpose? Where is the solution happening? Is it happening in a certain area? Is it happening all over the world? Giving those details helps us understand the depth of the solution. And then when is this solution going to happen? Is it something that's going to happen in 3 months, or is it going to happen in 6 years? Providing those parameters help us get a complete picture of what the students are trying to do with that solution. Any questions on elaboration?
Yes. Does it matter which ones they choose for their elaboration?
No,
I've seen examples where they just throw in, you know, the parameters of a future scene at the very end. You know, does it matter how fluent that elaboration is? The elaboration
should be appropriate. The elaboration should add value and clarity to the solution. So if they're just tacking on parameters at the end of every solution, that's not going to give the evaluator or anyone else information about that solution, how that solution works, and who that solution impacts. So tacking on parameters at the end of a solution would not earn elaboration points. Good question. Okay, let's talk a little bit about flexibility. You're going to be reminded again of how we did this in step 1. Waiting for our computer to catch up here. All right, there we go. Okay, flexibility is applied to any solution that has received an R for relevancy. Remembering again that solutions might expand or align with many of our categories, but only one category per solution can be credited. The students can earn up to 10 points for unique categories. And again, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good, April.
Okay, sorry. We want to make sure that we encourage our evaluators here also to assign categories that and look for categories that haven't already been awarded. Okay. And then we take a look for originality. These are those really unique, very insightful responses that are not common at the age and grade level that the students are competing at. Breakthrough thinking. We might ask other evaluators if it's something they've already seen with other students that they've evaluated booklets on. These are those special gems that are very rarely found. There's not a place to mark those for everyone. You would just note that in the original column and award those 3 bonus points for originality. Step 3, because it is so connected to and reliant on step 2, is really impacted if there are items missing from the underlying problem. So if the underlying problem has multiple key verb phrases or purposes, we cannot give a solution that is relevant unless it addresses both key verb phrases or purposes. That's extremely difficult to do. So unfortunately, when students make this error in their underlying problem construction, it makes their solutions very difficult to receive relevant points. Absolute verbs make solutions extremely difficult also, because finding a solution that is going to absolutely stop something is extremely difficult to obtain. Of course, we would all love to see drug abuse stopped. The likelihood of that happening is really unlikely, unfortunately, but also to completely stop something, your solution would have to get to that end result of stopping it rather than just helping it, and that's very difficult too. Teams who forget a purpose in their solutions or in their underlying problem cannot have their solutions scored as relevant in competition problems. We do ask that in practice problems that evaluators go ahead and write in a purpose and then score the solutions accordingly, but really make note of that in the comments that, you know, we're scoring your solutions because we included a purpose in your step 2. However, if you advance to competitions, know that you will not receive a purpose from the evaluators, and therefore all of your solutions would not be scored. If the key verb phrase and the purpose are the same, it's very difficult for solutions to be deemed effective. So these are some common concerns in the solution writing process. It is very, very important that we teach our students to focus in on those underlying problems and then generate a wide variety of solutions. But as we know, as adults who've survived problems before in our life, we know that if our solution doesn't match what we've deemed as the underlying problem, that solution cannot be effective because it's not solving the problem that we've chosen. So this is a vital skill for students to learn, not only in future problem solving, but to apply to real life and careers. Any questions so far?
No, that makes sense. I know that, you know, if you're evaluating for the first time, you may have a tendency to want to award points, but this is the place for tough love. It is not on the 2 learning problems, the practice problems, but
yes, yes. In competition, those of us that are a little more tender-hearted, and as educators, many of us often want to give kids the best credit possible, look for things that may not exactly be there properly. But in step 3, if there's not that connection to the underlying problem, we do, as evaluators, honoring the evaluation guidelines and the benefits of problem solving, we do have to score those as such. Yes. Or as you said, Jill, tough love. Okay, step 3 in review, we look at the fluency. Those are the relevant solutions. Wait for that to pop up. So when we are evaluating step 3, we are looking for fluency. I'll go ahead and go through this. I think there's a bit of a delay with the slides, but I think we can just talk through this effectively. Here we go, we caught up. So fluency is looking at the relevant solutions. Those are awarded up to 10 points. Flexibility is awarded up to 10 points. Those are categories that we see in those relevant solutions. Elaboration points are those who, what, where, when, why, and how. Elaborations, each solution that is scored elaborate must have at least 3 of those. The elaboration items of who, what, where, when, why, and how should be things that strengthen the solution, not tacked on to the end, as we discussed. Originality points are possible here in solutions for up to 3 points. And lastly, giving that good feedback to students. We can consider giving feedback to those solutions that need some specific items noted, but remember, we don't have to have feedback for all 16 of them, but providing a holistic overall feedback is very important. Do you want to jump in? Kyla has some more to add.
Just a few closing thoughts here on solutions. With the elaboration, it was brought up the idea of tacking on the future scene parameters and how those would not count for elaboration. It's important to keep in mind that all of the solutions must be operating within those future scene parameters to begin with. So if they've gone into something that is not within the context of the future scene, or rather contradicts those future scene parameters, it might not actually even be relevant at that point. But so that's the reason those elaboration is not awarded for the future scene parameters, because it's understood that just as the UP must operate within them, all of the remaining solutions must do so as well. And then there was one other thing that now I can't remember. I'm sure I'll come back to it at some point.
Okay. Are there any last questions on evaluating step 3?
No, it makes sense for now.
Okay, thank you so much.